Well, hello everyone and welcome to the Midweek show, where today we are going to wrap up our Indy 500 coverage and also preview the Belgian Grand Prix. Because today's episode is mostly going to be about the Belgian Grand Prix, but there will be a top 5 moments of the week for the Indy 500 last weekend at the end of this episode. So, to get started, let's go in to the news for this week ahead of this weekend's Belgian Grand Prix. Starting off with some great news coming from Grove that Williams have managed to find a buyer, and a buyer that is seemingly willing to stick to the team's heritage. And this is great news because, but sad in some other way as well, though, in the fact that the Williams family have now had to give up their ownership. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with regards to their ownership, whether Frank Williams will still have a role or anything, but they have been acquired by Dorilton Capital after their financial losses from last year, and at the moment Claire Williams is still team principal. Will she stay team principal? And what will Frank Williams' role still be in the team? But it's good that their future has now been secured, and that we will see Williams on the grid in years to come. But a lot of people are concerned about, will they prioritise the racing aspect or will they prioritise the money aspect, which we'll have to wait and see. It's an American company, Dorilton Capital, that have acquired them, but in the end, they are willing to stick to Williams' heritage and keeping their base in Grove. The next bit of news: the F1 2020 calendar is now complete. It will consist of 17 races, and the biggest news about the completion of the calendar is the addition of the Turkish Grand Prix, which will return to the calendar for the first time since 2011, and this is what F1 fans have been dreaming of since it exited the calendar. It's a very popular venue, and I honestly think that it will have quite a European audience if it is held with fans, that there will be quite a lot of people eager to go to this race, as a lot of people, it's a race that has been much missed from the schedule since it exited the Formula 1 calendar, and now we are going to get to see these current Formula 1 cars negotiate Turn 8, and that is going to be magnificent. And then after that, after the Turkish Grand Prix, we will have 2 races in Bahrain. I mean, they haven't said anything about whether there's going to be one on a different layout yet. They haven't said anything about that yet, which is what has been rumoured, that they're going to use the oval layout for one of them. But there's going to be 2 races in the Turkish Grand Prix on the 15th of November, and then there's going to be 2 races in Bahrain on the 29th and the 6th of December. And these 2 races are going to see Formula 2 supporting it, completing their season. I mean, I can see why Formula 2 it would have been nice to see Formula 2 go to a track like Turkey or Imola or Portugal, but you can see why they picked Bahrain, because that's basically 2 races for the price of 1, and that's matched the amount of races on their original schedule. And then closing out the season will be the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix on the 13th of December, which will complete the 2020 season, which will consist of 17 races. And you have to really hand it to Liberty Media, the way that they have managed this COVID-19 situation. I think that they have managed it a lot better than many other sports. I mean, you can see it with the positive test rate in their rounds of testing, whilst other sports are regularly getting like 2 or 3 positive tests every round. They're not getting any. Obviously, they have had the only person within the paddock that has got it is obviously Sergio Perez. I mean, that was so unlucky that it's so that the first person within the paddock, the regular person in the paddock, to get it so happened to be a driver. But no, the only other positive tests were people that weren't in the paddock, in a regular presence in the paddock, such as marshals. The F1 paddock has become a very COVID-safe zone, and Formula 1 have done a very good job with it. And a 17-race schedule in these circumstances, in like April and May or March, people would have been like, there is absolutely no way 17 races is going to happen. But that is the schedule, and F1 has done a really good job with it. And some quite big news in the whole Racing Point saga. Renault have withdrawn their appeal, and this is big news because Renault were the team behind the whole thing, the whole protests. But they seem very happy with the FIA's rule changes for next year, enough to withdraw the appeal. However, it's not over yet because teams such as Ferrari are not withdrawing their appeal against that basically states that the Racing Point's penalty was not harsh enough. So the whole scenario is not over yet, and Racing Point are not in the clear, and there is still a possibility that they may end up being punished for it. But all they want is clarification. It would be a bit of a shame to see them get punished for this whole drama. And we have a lot of movement in Formula 3. There are a lot of driver changes for this weekend. 4 seats are seeing different drivers to what they had in Barcelona. Have different drivers to what they had in Barcelona. 4 cars. And we're going to go through them. And the first one, and the most coveted one that was up for grabs, was the high-tech seat. Because Max Futrell caused a lot of shockwaves by announcing that he has left high-tech after a difficult start to the season. And that has vacated the number 4 high-tech car. He is going to be replaced by Pierre-Louis Chauvet, who has the French driver who spent a couple of years in the French F4 Championship, finishing 6th place in 2018. He did 7 races in Euro Formula in 2019 in quite a strong field, scoring a couple of points. And he has this year been competing in the Formula Regional Championship with the Van Amersfoort team. And he currently lies in 6th in the standings, behind the likes of Juri Vips, Patrick Pasma, Oliver Rasmussen, Arthur Leclerc and Gianluca Petikov, who currently leads the standings. But he will be driving the number 4 high-tech car. And the second change is in the number 25 Charouz car. But David Schumacher has left the team, and he is more on where he ended up later on, because that's one of the other driver changes. But he left Charouz for the start quite early last week and has been replaced by Russian driver Michael Belov. Now, not really much has been said about it, but it seems like he is quite an inexperienced driver. Not really much has been said about what he was in the Italian Formula 4 Championship last year, finishing in 4th place. Has been competing in the Formula Renault 2.0 Euro Cup this year, currently lies in 7th in the standings, as well as in the F3 Asian Series, currently lying in 11th in the standings. But he doesn't appear to have much car racing experience, so it's going to be a bit of a learning curve to be on the F1 support bill this early. But David Schumacher has now moved to the number 27 Carlin, which was being driven by various different drivers since Enam Ahmed left the team. But David Schumacher has now entered that seat and is most likely going to be in that seat for the rest of the season. And this is a one-off change. Sophia Flörsch is competing in an endurance championship race this weekend and will be replaced by Andreas Essner, who drove for the Jenser team last year for this round. So there are a lot of driver changes for this weekend, and it's going to be interesting to see how these new drivers get on. And talking of the other motorsport series, we are talking about the British Touring Car Championship, which took place last weekend, which saw Colin Turkington extend his lead despite not winning one of the races at Oulton Park last weekend in what was a fairly wet day. He finished in 4th, 3rd and 2nd, and he's extended his lead over 2nd place Ash Sutton, who is now in 2nd in the standings. Although Ash Sutton won a race but Colin Turkington didn't, his other results weren't good enough to prevent Turkington extending his lead to 19 points in the standings. Rory Butcher took his maiden win of the season in the first Oulton Park race and currently lies in 3rd in the standings. Then you have Tom Oliphant in 4th after having won the final race at Brands Hatch. Then you have Dan Kamish, who's really dropped off quite a lot. The Honda seems to be struggling for reliability quite a lot. Then you have Tom Ingram, who's been consistently up there, but not fast enough to be in title contention yet. Then you have Adam Morgan in 7th in the standings, who took victory in a red flag shortened last race at Oulton Park after an incident involving Ollie Brown, Stephen Jelly and Nick Hamilton. Ollie Brown and Nick Hamilton are actually on it, not going to be taking part in this weekend. Nick Hamilton's car is too damaged. They weren't able to repair it in time for this weekend's race. And Ollie Brown has actually had a small rib injury, which has put him out for this weekend. Hopefully he gets well soon and he'll be back on the grid in Thruxton. Then in 8th place in the stands you have Tom Chilton with Chris Smiley in 9th and Ollie Jackson rounds out the top 10. It's been an interesting season so far. And supporting the British Touring Car Championship we have the Formula 4 series, which saw a fairly interesting weekend, which saw a dramatic second race in Oulton Park in the wet, but a fairly formulaic third race. But the star of the weekend was Luke Browning, who took 3 out of 3 race victories, doing the triple. I believe Zane Maloney did that last year. But Luke Browning has now taken the lead of the standings. And he has a 22-point lead, the biggest gap that anyone's had so far in this season, after taking the 3 wins, and his championship rival, Zach O'Sullivan, having quite a bad weekend, getting involved in quite a few incidents, which has caused him to fall behind in the standings. Particularly in the second race, where he had quite a bad one. But Luke Browning leads the standings by 22 points back to Zach O'Sullivan, and Zach O'Sullivan has quite a lot to make up for. Alex Connor is currently in third despite a retirement in a controversial finish. That needs to be talked about, that finish between Luke Browning and Alex Connor in that dramatic second race where they were Luke Browning spent the entire race putting Alex Connor under pressure. And then on the final lap, he made his move, getting round the outside of the first corner and getting alongside. But the two made contact on the run down the hill. Alex Connor went into the wall. Luke Browning had a bit of car damage, but was able to continue and take the victory. And it was deemed a racing incident, which was the right decision. I mean, I did feel like Alex did kind of move across a little bit, but if it was his fault, he was kind of punished enough as it already was with a DNF. Then you have Casper Stevenson in fourth ahead of Roberto Faria. James Headley was back on form in the JHR car. Then you have Mansell, Belinsky, Pulling and Lubin rounding out the top 10. And of course, this weekend marks, it has to be mentioned, and this is going to be a big theme this week, mentioned quite a lot this weekend. This weekend marks a year since the tragic events of last year's race at Spa, where obviously we lost Anton Hubert in that horrific accident. And there have been a lot of tributes today. Formula 2 conveyed the news that the number 19 has now been officially retired from Formula 2 for good, which is what a lot of fans were wanting, that the number 19 has been retired from Formula 2. There will be a minute's silence, which will be a minute's silence both before the Formula 2 race on Saturday, which is obviously the race last year where the tragic accident happened, and there will be a minute's silence before the Formula 1 race. As I mentioned, there are a lot of tributes that you can see on the picture here. Pierre Gasly putting flowers at the scene of the accident, and there has been a sticker which will be carried by all F1, F2 and F3 cars throughout the weekend. But one good thing that we have seen today is Juan Manuel Correa is at the track this weekend. And there was quite a touching shot of Robert Schwartzman pushing him in his wheelchair around the track. And there was actually a shot released of him standing up. He has stated that his recovery is going better than expected, and he is hoping for a racing return in 2021. And obviously, we all wish him the best, and we hope to see him back on the track in 2021, where he belongs. But F1 is going to be racing in his honour this weekend, in Anton Hubert's honour this weekend. And as he would have wanted, the show goes on. So, let's preview the 2020 Belgian Grand Prix. Starting off with a track guide. So, taking a look at the track map, and it's a famous layout. As you can see, it's got the famous Eau Rouge and Radion corners. The Kemmel Straight's got Le Com. It's a track that motorsport fans love and look forward to every year, as it often produces an exciting race. You've also got Pouhon as well, which is a very fast corner, and Blanchimont. It really is a driver's track, is the Circuit des Spa-Francorchamps. And it's a power track as well. It will reward the cars that have really good straight line speed and punish those that don't. So, but let's take you round a video lap of this magnificent circuit, which is the longest circuit on the calendar. It consists of 19 corners and has an unusually short lap distance of 44 laps. So let's take you around a lap of Spa. So onto the main straight. It's one of these shorter main straights on the calendar, but then braking into the first corner, which is the tight right-hander at La Source. There have been a lot of incidents there in the past, but now heading down to the famous section of the track, down the hill, and then instantly going up the hill, in towards Eau Rouge. It's easy flat in a Formula 1 car these days, in towards Radion, onto the kink, onto the Kemmel Straight. The drivers are going to be on the throttle for almost 30 seconds, and it's heavy braking going into Les Combes. This is the best overtaking part on the track, into the Les Combes chicane. A lot of action typically happens there. And now into towards Malmedy, down the short straight up towards the long right-hander of Rivard. It's a very tricky corner as the track really drops away. And then going into the no-name corner, which is downhill, which means the car often wants to go wide. Now into one of the, what the drivers say is one of the trickiest corners on the track. Pouron, it's very hit and miss. And if you get that wrong, you can easily find yourself in the runoff. Then into the long chicane at Fangio. It's known as the Piff Path, written by the locals. Now in towards Stavelot, which is sometimes known as Campus. It's quite a tricky corner. Then to Curva Paul Prayer, which is a long right-hander. Now the car really opens up towards Blanchimont, which is easy flat in a current Formula 1 car. Where we saw Max Verstappen make that incredible move round the outside of Felipe Nasser. Now onto the heaviest braking point of the track, the bus stop chicane. We often see overtaking there. And then onto the main straight. And that is a lap of the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. Really is a driver's circuit. And now let's first talk about the feeder series, and then we'll go into a team-by-team guide for this Belgian Grand Prix. Whoops, didn't mean news. So, I mentioned that there were a lot of driver changes in the Formula 3 series this weekend. But Formula 3 does typically see some... Now we need to talk about the racing. Formula 3 typically sees some really exciting racing here at Spa. And there is an exciting title fight. It's the last 3 races of the Formula 3 season, with Spa, Monza and Mugello. Mugello being where the season is going to draw to a close. But it looks like it's going to be a straight fight between Logan Sargent and Oscar Piastri. Which one of them is going to win? It seems fairly unlikely that anyone behind, but in quite a packed season, you can't. But a lot can happen in Formula 3, and you can't really write off anyone that's close. Liam Lawson is in third on 99 points, and is the most likely. But then when you look at the points to challenge the leading two, then you have David Beckman, Theo Pourchaire, who's currently the highest rookie in the standings. Then you have Frederick Vesti in 6th, Jake Hughes in 7th, Alex Peroni in 8th, Richard Bashaw in 9th, with Clement Novalak rounding out the top 10. And of course, Formula 2, it is going to be a dip. And I've mentioned before that this is going to mark a year since the tragic events of Spa. It's going to be a difficult one for Formula 2 this weekend, and it's going to feel weird, especially as they go round at the end of the first lap. It's going to feel weird that was the moment where we lost a rising star last year, but in the build-up to this weekend's Formula 2 rounds, we can't forget that Formula 2 does see exciting racing at this circuit quite a lot. And there is an exciting title fight to keep an eye on. With the title fight between Callum Ilott and Robert Schwartzman. It looks like the title fight is between those two these days, at this stage, but there is plenty of time for others to catch up. But After a great time at Silverstone, Robert Schwartzman did catch up, close the gap in Barcelona, despite Ilott looking like he had a lot of pace. He did close the gap, despite not scoring in the second race. The gap got smaller, and Robert Schwartzman is showing signs that he is improving his qualifying. I honestly think it's going to be very close. It's been a thrilling Formula 2 season so far, and I think it's going to be a very exciting end to this season, because I think it's going to be quite close between Ilott and Schwartzman. And the battle for third is going to be very exciting. Christian Lundgaard is currently in third, but he kind of struggled a bit in the last race, and there are a lot of drivers behind on the prowl. Yuki Tsunoda, for example, is one of them. He is being talked about as a potential future AlphaTauri driver by the Red Bull Junior program, by the likes of Helmut Marko. And I said, his form this year is just making me wonder, could he have been a title contender last year had he been with, for example, someone like Prima or High-Tech? Could he have been a title contender in Formula 3 last year? Because he is proving more than a match for those who ended up fighting for the title in Formula 2. Then you have Mick Schumacher, Guan Yu Zhou, who's showing signs of improvement after his first race bad luck. Then you have Nikita Mazepin, Felipe Drugovich, Louis Delatrez and Dan Ticktum rounds out the top 10. Now it's time to do a team-by-team preview of the Belgian Grand Prix. In reverse constructors standings order. Williams I'm not as optimistic about this weekend as they have been about other race weekends. It's stated that they have a draggy car, which is not going to be ideal for a circuit like this and a circuit like Monza that they're going to next week. However, I don't think that they are treading this weekend as much as the Ferrari-powered teams are this weekend. Knowing that they've got an underpowered engine, that's the worst possible thing that you can have for the next two races. And I think it's going to be a struggle for them and their customer teams, particularly Haas, who have struggled with tyres. Last year, with a similar car, their race was a disaster. Standing at the Camel Straight, every time Kevin Magnussen, I believe, qualified fairly well, but every time he went past, he was being absolutely mugged by everyone. Likewise, it can be said for Alfa Romeo, who have had a very difficult start to the season, and they looked, with that Ferrari engine, which is clearly underpowered, this weekend is likely to be a difficult one for them. AlphaTauri, I'm expecting more of the same from them this weekend, being in that midfield fight. It's going to be a difficult race for Pierre Gasly. He has stated in the interviews that it's going to be a difficult one for him after what happened last year. But let's hope he can do his friend proud, because he has had a great season so far, and I think he could continue it at Spa. The car should be reasonable this weekend. In years gone by, we have learnt that the Renault engine is quite handy in a straight line, and that could come to the benefit of them both this weekend and next weekend. So I think Renault have reasons to be optimistic going into this weekend's Belgian Grand Prix. The same cannot be said for Ferrari. I'm pretty sure that they are absolutely dreading this weekend. Obviously, with their underpowered engine, this is going to be the track, and also a draggy car. This is going to be a track that is going to expose their weaknesses much more. This and Monza are going to be tracks that expose their weaknesses, and it may be harder for Charles Leclerc to repeat his plaudits from previous races. Obviously, the chances of Charles Leclerc repeating his victory from last year is fairly small. Like Renault, McLaren have reason to be optimistic, because that Renault engine, as I just mentioned, is pretty good in a straight line. And I honestly think McLaren have a chance of being back on the form that they were in Austria this weekend. Racing Point also have reasons to be optimistic, as obviously their car is known to be good in a straight line and is known to be good in fast corners. So I could see Racing Point being very strong this weekend. I'm not really sure about what Red Bull's chances are. They are likely to trim their car out as much as possible to make up for any engine straight line speed deficit, as they have done in previous years. But the Honda engine still is quite powerful. So I'm not really sure how close Red Bull are going to be to Mercedes. That remains to be seen, and we'll probably find out come the practice sessions, get an idea. But they'll likely be at least the second fastest team. As usual, Mercedes will go into this weekend as the favourites. The car should go well round here. It's good in a straight line and it's good in the corners. The car should be well hooked up, and I think it's going to be quite tricky to stop Mercedes this weekend. So it must be said, Mercedes will most probably go into this weekend as favourites. So that is the team by team review. But one thing that hasn't been factored in is the threat of rain for this weekend's Belgian Grand Prix, which is quite prominent has been quite prominent throughout the week. But we have seen fans have been disappointed with the weather in recent races. Will they be the same this weekend? Friday, it's expected to be, the rain chance have decreased from what they were earlier in the week. Because it looked like, earlier in the week it said 100% chance of rain. But right now, tomorrow, it's expected to be a fairly dry and sunny day with a 20% chance of rain. The rain chance does increase on Saturday with a few scattered showers, which indicates we should expect weather conditions maybe similar to 2018, where literally it rained at the time of the qualifying session in 2018 and almost turned the grid upside down. So there could be a grid shake-up. But Sunday is where there is the biggest threat of rain, where we have a 90% chance of rain at the moment. Of course, we have to, as we've seen in recent races, we need to take high chances of rain with a pinch of salt, as it could change. But fans are hoping for a wet race, and wet races around Spa often produce exciting racing, and that could throw a curveball in the weekend. at the moment so now looking at the drivers' standings. Now, Lewis Hamilton leads the standings by 37 points back to Max Verstappen in second place on 95. He states that he feels lucky to be in second place and that both Mercedes should be ahead of him. Valtteri Bottas is in third on 89 points. Really goes to show how much of a good job Verstappen is doing in a car which clearly is nowhere near as good as the Mercedes. Charles Leclerc is currently in fourth, doing an incredible job in that really difficult car that is the Ferrari. Then you have Lance Stroll and Alex Albon, who are level on points on 40. Then you have Lando Norris in 7th on 39 points. Sergio Perez in 8th on 32, having missed 2 races. Then you have Sainz and Ricciardo rounding out the top 10. So now, to finish off this pre-race show, let's go into the Race Week Moments of the Week. And this is about the Indy 500 last week. And there were many major moments in what was a dramatic Indianapolis 500. In 5th place, we have something that actually happened before the race. I could not find a picture of to use for this sequence, but essentially Marco Andretti took the pole, and Mario Andretti, who usually takes a lucky celebrity for a ride in the 2-seater car. The person that he took this year was none other than his son, Michael Andretti, who obviously is the principal of the Andretti team. And it was a very nice moment, having 3 generations of the Andretti family lead the field in the form of Mario Andretti driving the 2-seater, Marco Andretti being the passenger in the 2-seater, and Michael Andretti being the passenger, and Marco Andretti leading the field on pole position for the race itself. It was quite a good moment, that was. In 4th place, we have Alexander Rossi's incredible overtake, where he passed like 5 cars in one. It could have easily resulted in him ending up in the wall. It was a real risk, but he took it. Essentially, what happened was there was a bit of a checkup when Pagenaud hit the back of Hunter Ray. Rossi seized the opportunity and found his way past like 5 cars that were affected by that checkup, and he managed to get through. Unfortunately, his fight back through the field after his pit stop drama was ended when he crashed out, but he did treat us to one of the moments of the race. An angry Alexander Rossi is very exciting to watch. In 3rd place, and I haven't changed that, I thought I had changed that, but had to make do without anything, is Scott Dixon's dominance. And yes, he didn't end up winning the race, but he did show himself to why he is highly regarded and seen as one of the greatest drivers ever never to race a Formula 1 car. He dominated in ways that I've never seen before at the Indy 500, until a little bit of bad luck with the cautions put him under attack. But until then, he was in utter command. There wasn't really much he could have done about losing the race. And it was unlucky that he wasn't able to get the lead back. You did have to feel for him a little bit, because I think he did intend to have an attack on Sato in the last 3 laps. But obviously the late yellow stopped it. But Scott Dixon showed he is very handy in a racing car. Even as he's getting older, he is shown to be one of the best drivers ever to set foot in a single-seater racing car. And he showed that with his dominance. At number 2, one of the most talked about moments of the race, Spencer Pigot showing how safe these cars are, escaping from the mother of all shunts. I mean, essentially what happened was he tapped the wall on the exit of the final corner and then skidded sideways into the attenuator, impacting between the wheels, which meant that the cell got the brunt of a lot of the impact. But the car did its job. The survival cell stayed completely intact. The bits that came off were designed to come off, but the cell remained intact. Spencer Pigot he got out of the car under his own power. He was sent to the hospital for a checkup, but he was discharged within hours with absolutely no injuries. And that is an absolute testament to how safe modern race cars are. And it was really good to see him walk away from such a horrific shunt. Of course, at number 1 we have everyone's favourite F1 underdog, Takuma Sato, taking his second Indianapolis 500 victory. He is a very popular driver around the world because he was a very popular underdog during his time in Formula 1, and he's become an absolute superstar in Japan. He took his second Indianapolis 500 victory, and he is now, I believe that he is now one of Japan's most successful racing drivers of all time. He did deserve the win, and he is one of the nicest of guys as well. So it was, a lot of people were happy to see him take his second Indianapolis 500 victory. So that is it for the midweek show, and we will see you tomorrow for the Friday recap, where we will recap all of tomorrow's action from the practice sessions to the support race qualifying sessions. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow for the Friday recap. Goodbye.